Welcome to the Food Professor Podcast, presented by Caddle, Season 4, Episode 26. I'm Michael LeBlanc.
And I'm the Food Professor, Sylvain Charlebois.
Our very special guest this week is the co-founder of Scout, Chef Charlotte Langley, Prince Edward Islander, gave the modern home cook access to deliciously crafted, bespoke, responsible seafood by elevating the practice of seafood canning. I love Scout. Now, she has just moved on from Scout to a new phase of her journey, Langley Foods, an incubator that will provide emerging Canadian brands with help growing their business. And she is our guest this week.
Yeah, no, we haven't had a chef in a while, actually. So it was nice to have her on. And it's just really, she's a dynamo. Oh, my goodness. It's hard to keep up with her.
Well, it was hard to get her. It was hard to get her on the mic. We've been asking her for a couple of years, and we've just never been at the same place at the same time. So finally, the universe aligned, and we got her on. So it's a great interview. So we'll of course get to that a little later. We got to get right to the news because it's been an action-packed week. I guess let's start with the shocking scenes from Baltimore as a giant ship carrying 4,700 containers rammed into the Francis Scott Key Bridge Tuesday morning. So there's been some talk about supply, six lost lives or souls, and there's been some talk about
as
supply
we speak,
chain.
They haven't found them yet.
No, I think it's in a reclamation, unfortunately.
I know.
Now, Baltimore's a big port, mostly automotive, but I think there's some sugar and other stuff. Any comments on impact in the short term on this food supply chain in North America?
So first of all, our thoughts are for the families affected by this tragedy. It's just awful. I mean, the first thing we saw that morning on Tuesday morning was this bridge collapsing. It was just surreal. Oh my goodness. But from an ag perspective, Baltimore is ranked 29th in the country as the most important port in the U.S. So it's not that big a deal. And we're at the end of March. So all seeds fertilizers are in already. In fact, actually, farmers in the U.S. are already putting seeds in the ground as we speak in many parts of the country. I would say the biggest concern right now, there are two concerns. Cost for transportation, they're going to go up, obviously. I mean, if you lose a bridge like that, the detour will cost you more, so it will certainly impact transportation costs. And the other issue is, when will this seaway clear up? You have a port being idle, and later in the year with harvest, you need to make sure that vessels actually go through there. So that's the number one concern right now, impacting the agri-food sector. All
right. Well, I know the U.S. government has vowed to step in quick. I mean, if they clear out the wreckage and allow the movement of boats, that's different than the rebuilding of the bridge, which has got to happen as well. It's a big commuter. I've been on that bridge myself. I spent a lot of time in Baltimore.
Oh, have you? Okay. I've never crossed that bridge at all. It seems like a very narrow bridge, eh? Yeah,
it's like an industrial bridge, but it's a very important bridge to movement of goods. So the Americans will rebuild it real quick.
And as you can imagine, in Halifax, there's lots of talk. Well, I mean, we are being impacted by what happened in Baltimore. The port will get busier for obvious reasons, but we have two bridges that certainly would be a target for vessels that are in trouble. So today, actually, I was crossing the bridge. I actually did look whether or not it was a ship, just to make sure,
Yikes. Now you look twice.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, so good luck to our friends in the U.S. for sorting that out real quick. Now, it's Easter week, so let's talk about the Easter Bunny and chocolate. So I'm seeing numbers for cocoa prices surpassing $10,000. What's the measurement? MT? What's that?
Not Bitcoin. Not Bitcoins.
Not Bitcoin. We're going to talk about Bitcoin later because you've been angling to talk about Bitcoin for 3 or 4 weeks. So we'll get to talk about Bitcoin in a few weeks.
For cocoa.
Yeah, two big questions, I guess. One, is this a confluence of events, or is this a trend? Is this the environment? Is this just because it's a commodity? Commodities have up, down years, hard years. They go up and down all the time. And second, now the timing strikes to me, and I wanted your thoughts on this. The timing, it's hitting this today. Well, the chocolate that would have went into products that are on shelves shipped to retailers was 6 months ago.
Oh,
at
yeah.
least. So is this really going to impact us for this holiday, or really we're looking at something like a Christmas impact more than an Easter impact? Give me your thoughts on those two things.
Yeah, the rally really started in October, November. That's when we started to hear about what was going on in the Ivory Coast and Ghana. And for people who don't know, the black pod, which is a fungus, is impacting production in both countries, and both countries represent more than 60% of cocoa's global production. So it's really massive. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And there is a fungus because it's super humid over there. There's a lot of water, and floods have actually impacted roads, and a lot of farmers just can't get products to market. And so that's the other factor going on right now. And to add to fuel to the fire, Asia and other emerging countries where the middle class wants they want cocoa, they're still buying. And so right now what you have is are a bunch of multinationals like Hershey, Mondelez, Nestle. They're forward buying right now, like since October, November, as much as possible. And you're right. You would think that perhaps chocolate prices wouldn't be impacted by Easter, but actually I've been looking around and prices are much higher. Cocoa is not a factor, but there are other factors making chocolate more expensive for this Easter. But if I were you, as you go out to buy that chocolate bunny rabbit, I'd think about mom for Mother's Day.
Yeah, that's a good point. You could stash it with your beef that's going up.
I would say so. Yeah, it's going to be quite problematic. Yeah, so get beef and get chocolate, and everyone's going to be happy.
All right. I love chocolate, so good news.
But essentially, news. I mean, here's my thought about what's going on with cocoa's rally. At $10,000, if you're Hershey, wouldn't you want to start thinking about producing your own cocoa? Like, seriously, you can actually produce cocoa in the lab now. It is possible. So at 5,000, no way. Just rely on Ivory Coast and Ghana. But because of climate change, you got to wonder how many companies out there would think of producing cocoa for themselves, to make sure that they secure that supply chain for constant inputs. And what about Canada? I mean, why not produce cocoa in Canada at some point?
Is it a weather thing? Can we produce cocoa here in Canada?
In a lab, you can do anything.
Oh, in a lab. I see. Okay.
Oh, yeah. You can produce coffee in a lab now. But costs are prohibitive. But like I said, the market could actually push some companies to reconsider. That's the thing.
Interesting. Let's stay on price or cost of food here. We've been talking about these breadcrumbs of data for the past, 6 months, where it looks like Canadians are actually buying less groceries. Now, you published a chart in social media on X that indicated early 2020, Canadians were spending $301.92.
Yep.
And in January 2024, they're spending $248.15. So that's a big difference down. Now, a couple of quick questions. One, is this in real dollars, which would make it worse? Like, is it inflation?
That's
adjusted?
Right. It is in real dollars, yeah.
It is in real dollars. So, and then second is, does this include restaurant spending? And so this is just food bought from grocery stores. So those two questions. I got one more, but you've answered one. What are we looking
absolutely.
at? Absolutely.
So the 248 is just retail. That's just retail.
Okay.
Actually, I did look at food service, and food service is 268 for the month of January. So you got that 41-59 split between service and retail right now in Canada.
Does that make sense to you? Doesn't that feel super high?
No.
Well, I mean, there's only but the restaurant business is like a $91 billion business, and groceries like a couple of hundred.
The average split over 10 years is about 39-61. I mean, it's Americans are 54-46 on the other side. So 54 service, 46 retail.
Really?
I don't think it's that much. No, absolutely not. I mean, when you look at the food economy, you kind of have to understand what that split is, because that's how you kind of,
that's total consumption. Yeah,
exactly. It's total consumption. If it's growing, that's great. If it's not, then you got a problem. And I'll be honest with you, it's not growing.
So in this numbers, you're saying with this number, these numbers are saying, I should say, that,
and these are Statistics Canada's number, by the way. It's not mine. It's not ours at all. Just so you know. Don't shoot the messenger. Because a lot of people are skeptical about Statistics Canada, and I can understand why.
So this comes with a couple of caveats, but on its surface, the numbers seem to say people are spending less money on groceries, and we just celebrated, Stats Canada released today, we're now at 41 million Canadians.
That's right.
So I guess that would change the index a little bit because it is a per capita thing. But what do you think? Are people buying less? They're spending less. They're being sharper with their money. They're using better leftovers. Is there any upside to this number, or is it all like people can't afford to buy what they used to buy?
Well, I mean, in January, if you look at food service, there was a huge drop of 19% from December to January, which is obviously typical. Every year there is a drop from December to January.
Sure.
But January 2024 is actually stronger than January 2023. Now, if you exclude inflation, it is not. But it's actually not as bad as I thought. Now, Kelly Hutchison from Restaurants Canada last night actually commented on my graph on X, and we kind of both agreed that the situation is not that bad. I mean, we are talking a lot about bankruptcies and closures, and yes, it's not easy, but it's not that bad. People are still going out. They're just very careful. It's just on the retail side, I think it's a bit of a slugfest right now. People are exiting traditional routes, and they're going offline with the Dollaramas, the Giant Tigers, and everything else.
Just interesting. And the numbers that started in 2020, do we see any impact of the COVID era? I mean, obviously in 2020, there's a tremendous shift by necessity to consumption from retail of food. Do you detect any shift? If you looked at these numbers in like 2019, would the arc be the same? Do you have any sense of that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, and you raised that point, and I actually did look back at the data, and per capita food expenditures retail from 2017 to 2020, it's anywhere between $280, $290 a pop. Okay.
So all adjusted for real dollars, right? So that's
just real dollars. Yeah, just real dollars. So obviously, the dollar today is not worth the same as in 2017. But what's upsetting is that I couldn't go back beyond 2017 because of how the database is structured now. They just kind of erased everything. So I can't go back beyond Statistics Canada, man. I don't know. Like I don't know. Well, I guess we can just try to figure out, go forward, what this all means. But it sounds like it means there's less dollars being spent, which sounds to me like more people competing for that dollars from a brand and a retail perspective, and people trying alternative, as you said, alternative channels to buy their food. You and I have been talking about this for a while. I'm particularly interested on Ozempic and the GLP-1s impact on restaurants and QSR. It's so fascinating.
Consumption. So what did we find out? What did we learn from the survey? What do you think the impact's going to be? What'd you learn?
Caddle and us, I mean, we were frustrated because we couldn't find any Canadian data on GLP-1s. Like there was nothing. And there was a lot of stuff going on out of the US. We knew that 11 million people were using GLP-1s in the US, including Ozempic. We all heard about the Oprah Winfrey exit of Weight Watchers, of course, and we know that JP Morgan is estimating that perhaps 30 million Canadians will be using GLP-1s by 2030, but nothing out of Canada.
So 30 million Americans, you said 30 million Canadians, but you meant 30 million
Americans. That's right. And so we thought, we need some numbers in Canada, and so we got some numbers thanks to Caddle, and so the actual answer is, drum roll, we estimate that between 900,000 to 1.4 million Canadians are currently using a GLP-1 drug. Now, of that sum, not all of them are using a GLP-1 drug to lose weight. 27% of them are basically using a GLP-1 drug to lose weight. But I got to tell you, I mean, many of them, they've cut on pop, chocolate, snacks. They're eating less. They're buying less food. They're going less to the restaurant, less alcohol, you name it. And I tell you, this week, I mean, I actually met some executives in the food industry, and they are absolutely paying attention to this. Absolutely.
Is it too much of a stretch to say that these numbers that we started the pod off with, if not now, I mean, 1 million Canadians is not nothing, cutting back their food consumption?
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
well, the number of Canadians who are using a GLP-1 drug to lose weight is basically the size of the city of Halifax, basically.
Sure.
That's a lot of people.
The numbers are probably underreported because it's very hard to get those products right now. And
yeah, absolutely.
They're not all being...
Not all are losing weight. Not all have changed their buying
some
patterns.
For diabetes.
I mean, some of them actually haven't seen any changes at all. And again, I do want to disclose the fact that I'm not a medical doctor or nutritionist, and our report is not about encouraging or
advocating in any way.
Advocating the use of GLP-1s. We were just super curious to see how this phenomena is or could impact the food industry.
Yeah, I think it's a big issue for QSR first, sugary drinks, pops, impulse foods. But overall, I think it could be something. But, if it helps people live longer, it all balances out in the long run, I suppose.
Yep.
So let's talk about a couple more things. You've been asking, you would want to talk about Bitcoin for a couple of episodes now. How does this relate to the food industry? Now, what's on your mind about the currency for cybercrime and global larceny?
I'm intrigued by that phenomenon. I'll be honest. So I don't know. I don't own any Bitcoin. I don't intend to invest money that I wish I can lose. I mean, a lot of people are talking about this digital currency. It's not really, in my view, it's not a digital currency. It's a digital asset. That's kind of how I think about Bitcoin. And the reason why I got interested in Bitcoin is because of blockchain. And blockchain actually is a big topic in the food industry because of traceability. You want to trace and track products, and exactly, in real time. And some companies are using blockchain, like Walmart, and they're getting the support of IBM. So that's really interesting. I don't think about Bitcoin as a currency to buy things. I look at Bitcoin as an option, as a alternative to our central banking system, essentially, because we've been talking about inflation for a very long time now, and a lot of people are wondering, okay, do we still trust the system we have? Do we still trust the currency that we have? Are we politicizing interest rates, inflation? And the answer is yes, we are. We're seeing more and more politicians writing letters to Governor Macklem saying, you should bring down rates, you should raise rates. And I'm going, how did that happen? And so and it's not just in Canada, it's everywhere. It's in the US, it's in Europe. And that's why I think there's a lot of push. And of course, ETFs have opened up the door in January, and that's why we're seeing this rally with Bitcoin. There are more buyers. The pool for buyers have actually increased in January, and that's why we're expecting Bitcoin to increase. But if in a perfect world, okay, you control inflation, and inflation becomes more predictable than it is now. Like a lot of things can change in the food industry. For example, the quality of the food we get. The shrinkflation issue that we've been talking about, skimflation. I mean, all of these things, I don't think you would eliminate, but certainly it would actually allow companies to better prepare, better challenge. Because right now, all we're seeing the last 2 years are bogus accusations against certain companies. People are upset. People are in front of grocery store with signs. And I mean, it's just really mayhem. And I do wonder how life would look like if the market in general embraces Bitcoin as the new gold, or as another gold, if you will. Because gold doesn't really belong to anything. It's not controlled by anything. It's just a market. Mm-hmm. Same for Bitcoin. So that's why I got thinking about, now, of course, you got cryptocurrency experts that are looking at the concept of cryptocurrency, but you also have some Bitcoin fanatics. Those guys are scary. I mean, it's just because you got to talk about all the scandals and all the. I mean, Bitcoin was created, and I mean, the first document about Bitcoin was written by an unknown author. Nobody knows who the author is.
No one knows.
I mean,
no one knows.
Weird, right?
Shrouded in secrecy.
I know, and that's really what bothers a lot of people, a lot of sane people like you and I. But still, I thought of talking about this on this podcast because I actually do think implications for the food industry could be significant over time.
Interesting. I didn't connect those dots. Thank you for that. That's an interesting.
And I'm not going to charge you tuition for it.
Just before we get to our great interview with Charlotte, I want to talk about getting back to these numbers in a couple of pieces of news today. One is the Stats Canada releases the fact that there are now 2.67 million temporary residents, doubling in 2 years, yet you still have associations asking, we need more temporary residents. And at the same time, the Bank of Canada says we're in a crisis of productivity. Yep. To me, these two things are connected. In other words, you keep bringing in cheap labor instead of investing in technology, that number is going to get worse than better. And, where are these people going to live? Are they going to live in the
GDP per capita is down?
Are they going to live in the restaurant? Like, where are these people going to live?
I don't know.
I don't know. So what do you make of all this? Am I connecting dots that shouldn't be connected, or
well, more people is a good thing, obviously, but you want to take care of them. You want the economy to take care of them, and people won't alone solve your productivity problem. I mean, you need a plan. You need a plan, and of course, right now, what we're seeing is a private sector sitting on a sideline, not investing at all. It's just the public sector is doing the heavy lifting in financing,
or
everywhere.
Asking for more. Just give me more cheap labor.
Exactly, and so it's a concern. I mean, we're not capitalizing on the people that we actually are welcoming in this country. I don't think they're disenfranchised. A lot of people are coming to Canada, and I suspect that many of them are disappointed with their experience, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, if some of these temporary foreign workers could, weld or maybe frame up a house, might be a little more of a closer to some kind of solution that
is that something we need? I think it's something we need, right?
I think so. Anyway, listen, as I've always said, there's three levers to pull to solve the demographic realities. It's not political. It's just numbers. It's just math. You can increase immigration. You can increase domestic programs to encourage Canadians to have bigger families, or you could put in technology. Anybody that pulls one lever too hard is not going to win. So in my mind, it's a blend. All right. Well, that's me kind of going on.
No, it's a good point. Actually, it's a great topic for sure.
Yeah. Let's get to our great interview with Charlotte, talk about a little bit about Scout, but more about what she's doing today, incubating, helping startup folks in the food sector. But first, we're going to hear from our good friends at Caddle. Ever feel like the world of ratings and reviews needed a superhero? Well, enter Caddle, the caped crusader with Canada's largest, most diverse, and daily active consumer panels. That's right, Caddle is not your average podcast sponsor. So why choose Caddle? Because Caddle excels in consumer insights from your consumer, while also blazing trails in the realm of ratings and reviews, pioneering the future landscape of user-generated content. Beyond the valuable syndicated receipt data, they stand as unparalleled collector of reviews at scale, irrespective of category or price point. a testament to their impact, partnerships with giants like Walmart, Canadian Tire, and more. Visit askcaddle.com now for an exclusive The Food Professor podcast listener discount on your first review or research campaign today. That's askcaddle.com.
Well, hello, Charlotte. Welcome to our podcast.
Thank you. I'm so thrilled and excited to be here. It's been a while, but I'm happy to finally connect with you guys.
Yeah, I know you've been traveling a lot. And you've been incredibly busy. I guess for our listeners, tell us more about yourself, your story, and what do you do for a living?
Well, I do lots of things for a living, which is sort of funny. It started off as being a culinary, like a chef. That was my beginning of my culinary career. My career in general was being a chef. But now it's evolved to so many different interesting things. And I decided through the very long story of my romantic, discovery of being a young cook, being in touch with my local community, my fisheries, my farmers, my distributors, etc., that I rolled into launching a CPG brand called Scout Canning, which I've been working on for the last 10 years. So I have this sort of Jill of all trades kind of vibe, I guess you could say, where I'm not just one category of operator, I'm many categories of an operator.
The journey that you've had has been incredibly impressive. Thank
you.
Yeah, I mean, you founded Scout to leading to Langley Foods now. Could you share with us what inspired you to transition from running a successful canned seafood brand to starting a consumer foods brand and agency?
Absolutely. It was born out of the experience that I faced when I launched Scout. There are so many barriers of entry for new startups, whether it be food, CPG, food, beverage, pharmacy, cannabis, like the whole gamut. You want to build your dream. You have an idea. You're an innovator. You're creative. You're passionate. Barriers to entry. Maybe you're just a creative person that doesn't understand how to do a financial pro forma or make a report. Maybe you have this beautiful vision of what a company could look like, but you don't know how to get there. The barriers that I faced when I started was finding access to funding. And that was something that I had no experience with. I worked as a chef in a restaurant. I was a caterer. I did all those sort of things. I never once looked at financing or finding access to any sort of funding. So for me, I'm going, why would you? You get paid a salary and then you do your job and, you probably don't get paid overtime, but maybe if you're in a good space, you do. And I thought of Scout. I was going, I initially wanted to get out of the restaurant industry, as in I wanted to expand beyond being in a restaurant. I felt like I had the desire and the passion to be bigger, to be big fish, small pond, I guess you could say, for a pun for the seafood industry space. And I got lots of weird jokes. And by making it, launching a CPG product, by bringing Scout to market, I was like, I'll just come up with an idea. I'll make a really amazing, unique product. Happily, also very fortunately, the timing was really weirdly excellent for coming up with a canned food item. And the hardest part for me was learning how to get it commercialized and get it to market. After I come up with the recipes and the format of the idea, how do you actually get something into a grocery store or retail? There's a lot of steps. So Langley Foods is inspired by my grandfather's company, which was a food business in the 60s and 70s and 80s. That was acquired by Farm Boy, actually, when Farm Boy was just starting up. And then he closed it down, consulted for a few years. And then over the last 30 or so years, as I've been growing up and becoming myself, I decided that now was the time to take a bit of a legacy project and pay some homage to my grandfather by building out a food and beverage CPG sort of trust fund shared office concept that helps people gain access to all of the resources they need to build their own version of or vision of what they want to see in CPG in Canada specifically to start. So It's helping people with what I needed help with. It's the same thing, now that I've learned I want to help other people. That seems natural and normal to me.
I want to go back to your years with Scout.
Yes.
Other than financing, what are the biggest challenges that you had to face, and how did you overcome them? And what are some of the greatest accomplishments that you're proud of when you were at Scout?
Oh my gosh, I love these questions, and I love thinking about the good times and the hard times too. Big challenges, finding co-packers,
co-packers,
finding somebody to work with, a plant, a facility, a processor that all of a sudden you're going, I want to can, mussels and lobster and whatever. And they're going, we don't do that. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, they're like, we work with lobster. And we're going, well, what if we tried this and brought this to market? Here are some samples that I made. And we were sitting down at the table for the first tasting of products I had made at home, like my test kitchen. And everybody that worked at the factory in the facility, they're like, this is gross. Like, what do you mean? Like, why do you want to make this? And I was like, okay, well, it's something I just need to find a way to make it better or improve. But they had never experienced anything the way that I had made it before, and they weren't used to working in this medium. So convincing them that this was going to be an opportunity that's both viable for them financially, it's good for the plant, it's good for keeps the plant operational and open. It took some convincing. But once we were able to convince them, I started doing R&D and some serious product dev with the team. They started to understand and recognize why. They recognized the why. So I think one of the biggest accomplishments staying in that sort of time was Scout. This was like 2018 at this time when I finally found a partner. I started in 2014 with the dream and the idea. And then by 2018, I brought in some partners and found and started asking for help. But the biggest accomplishment was working with the facility with the first co-packing partner, because we didn't have the cash flow or the desire to really open up a $7 million cannery, which is large scale. Was working with the people in the facility in Prince Edward Island, which is where I'm from. We were able to keep the plant open year round, increase everyone's salaries above minimum wage to a living wage, which was actually very nice. And people were excited about having employment as well as a variety in their work, in their days. So for me, I was able to bring my base accomplishment was sharing the success of Scout across the board, across all channels in the supply chain, not just for the top level heavies, just for everybody.
I want to take a quick step back and talk about Scout. By the way, it is my favorite. There's nothing I enjoy more than your mussels on a little bit of cream cheese and cracker. I got to, I'm a fan too. First. I'm a fan first.
Thank you very much.
Take that as a huge compliment coming from Michael. I got to tell you.
I will. It's done.
I in tune that there was a little bit of it's something you said, and I want to follow up on it. There was a little bit of a renaissance for canned food. I mean, I was you just came back from Portugal, and of course there's this, the fantastic world of Portuguese sardine store, right? Just opened up in Times Square, and of course there's many of them in Portugal. Would you say that canned food is having a bit of a moment, and particularly bespoke canned food? Like yours is amazing. It's not your run of the mill kind of find everywhere on a shelf, which is both, so interesting as you've described, and so delicious, but also, you got to find the right place on the right shelf at the right price point. But would you say that you were part of a renaissance of more bespoke canned fishery foods?
I would definitely like to say that I feel that I was. I can't take responsibility for a movement. I can never remember the name of this, but it's called the unconscious collective or the subconscious collective, right, where people start discovering things around the same time, across the globe, whether it's cancer research or tin fish. And it sort of became this, maybe I felt something was coming because, COVID started, and then boom, canned food sales rose by 900%. Yeah. So launching Scout into the market in 2020, we initially were trying to launch as a food service business, to bring product to bars and, the kegs of the world, like Crack and Go, saves on labor, it's easy to serve. It's like a can of beer, but way different. And we had to move very quickly into D2C like everybody else. Mm-hmm. But all of a sudden, canned food became very popular because people were hoarding canned food at their homes. It just happened to be a weird positive time for canned food. But I think the idea is that, North America's consumption of tin fish in general has primarily been the salmon and tunas of the space. Sure. And a lot of those things that we've consumed are the stigma is not that great. They're associated with being lower quality, cheap food, not that great. And the bespoke or the artisanal or the craft cans that I brought to the table and brought to market we're meant to inspire and involve the palate of the tin fish consumer. You've been to Europe. We've talked about this before. You go to Portugal and Spain, you eat these tins of sardines that are caught under the moonlight, hand-packed by beautiful, amazing, skilled nonas that have been in the plant for 35, 40 years. Yeah. Beautiful organic olive oil, cold pressed, but, like all the stories that go along with the conserva culture of Europe, and bringing that to North America and sharing that and getting people excited. Oh yeah, we definitely, and myself, definitely not alone, have been bringing that to market I think quite well, in all honesty.
Well, that's a great segue into the next question, which is social media and as a food entrepreneur.
Oh, girl. Hot girls eat tin fish, like hot girls eat tin fish. Hot girls eat sardines by the pool. That blew my mind. That blew my mind when that started happening, because I've said this 1,000 times. Who would have thought that tin fish would be sexy?
No, but the magic of creating a program, some of these things take on a life of their own. As you say, you never would have imagined someone would use your product and amplify it, or suddenly it becomes a thing on social media. But for a practical sense, it is a marketing campaign, or a component of the marketing plan of any food entrepreneur has to be social media. And whether it's, tin fish date nights or whatever, it's very hard to construct. Right, it's very hard to construct something viral. What's your advice in the entrepreneurs, CPG companies, about what they can do to at least have a platform on social media, and what are some of the best practices?
I have to say, now that I'm an elder millennial, I was just told that yesterday for the 50th time.
A boomer reminded you? Is that what happened?
No, it was actually a Gen Zer, which is fine. Whatever. Okay. We all need to be categorized and put in our spaces to find ways to communicate with each other, however that works. Yeah. But my best advice is what I feel like what I did, and I can only speak this. I'm not going to give you stats and data here, but it really is community outreach. You want something to go viral, you see somebody that is you search tin fish on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook, wherever you're planning on utilizing, or all of them. And the people that are talking about it already, help amplify them, bring them on as partners, collaborate with them, say, hey, I got a couple cans. Would you taste them and let me know what you think? Hopefully they like your product. Mm-hmm. But really embracing the community outreach. When I first started Scout, I was doing marketing and comms as well. We didn't have a CMO or a director of marketing. We had myself, and then the three of us doing, financials, operations, and then me being the communicating type of girl. And I just reached out to everybody I knew over the last, 10, 15 years of my professional culinary career. I'm going, taste this, try this, let me know what you think. Take a video, maybe make it maybe a minute, longer version. Just getting your product out there and trying lots of different channels. You look at Graza, which is an amazing olive oil brand from the States. They are collaborating with everybody in so many different unique ways. A chip company to make a Graza potato olive oil chip. They're making funny costumes and going in a Canadian version, mummering to door to door, selling the product, but making it fun. There's so many unique ways to get creative that don't have to be costly to build your sort of, your voice in the space. But community outreach, ask everybody to help you. Send your products to everybody. Put aside they call it in the bar industry or the service industry, your spill tab over your spillover.
Right.
You can pour 5 beers down the drain around the night. That's usually what you give to your buddies.
Yeah.
Make sure you have a spill or a spill tab for your friends in the marketplace, because they will help you. They want to help you. So,
well, it's funny, because if you and I were having this conversation 50 years ago, you'd likely would have said the same thing. I mean, sampling has been around for a long time, but the acceleration of social media, I think there's a particular way to think about it. Let's cast our mind forward, though. Let's cast our mind forward to the kind of trends that you're thinking about, CPG trends, if we want to say CPG trends, but food service trends. As you sit and you were at the forefront of the tin fish, and you found yourself there just from a confluence of events, and it made sense to you. What are the things that are making sense to you right now? What do you see in the future? If you you get your crystal ball or tin ball or whatever you got, I don't know.
I'll shake up my magic 8-ball over here. I would say that
answer unclear. Let's see if we can clear that answer.
Exactly.
What do you see
Ask
coming?
again later. What I see coming is I'm looking at how people are eating at home. You have to look at it from zone in on how people are consuming food at home. Not that people that are dining at restaurants every day, because the majority of the consumer marketplace is people that eat at home. And I'm going, how are they eating? One, they have to work more hours or pick up another part-time job or something to afford the same amount of food they had to. So they're looking at their time management differently. But they also get home and they want to enjoy experiences with their family, friends, partners, with however the family dynamic, what that dynamic looks like what they're coming home to. There still has to be a component of food service, as in making something or creating something to share like that, love and passion for your people. And also the act and art of cooking is something that people enjoy. That, alongside the cost of things going up, I'm going, what is the most delicious, nutritious, convenient food that also has a few steps to make it your own? So when COVID started, we were having all those, people are sitting on those big kits, here's everything in a little plastic bag, chop it up and throw in the thing. Now you've made a dish. It's great. It's a really super cool model, but it doesn't allow the person to really get in touch or create something that they're just making like a paint by number.
Yeah,
so how do we create products?
Remember the days of adding an egg to the cake recipe? Like it didn't take off until you said add egg. Right.
Add one egg. Add a teaspoon of water. That's it. But the scenario where I see people doing CPG or food products that are convenience, but with some room for creativity, where it gives them the convenience and cost or the availability to make good products, like tasty, well-made, that you can still add your touches to. They're not fully finished. You know what I mean? Like there's still one or two more steps at the end. So for example, maybe like a really cool microwave product that is highly nutritious and delicious and really cool packaging that's better for the planet. They're looking at driving value through like certifications to make the cost of that thing go up and make it more valuable at the grocery store, but also it carries a higher level of nutrition and protein and all those sort of things. So I'm seeing innovative scenarios around convenience food for people that is healthy, nutritious, and also has a touch of, home cooking to it, whatever that may be. And really championing products that give back to people and planet and to also profit. Like one of my favorite lines is saving the world, but also making money. We can do both.
Yeah, that latter part is not overly popular sometimes in Canada for sure. But you need to make money to make your business sustainable.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, but we can save the world and we can make great products and support, social economic impacts for factories, people, business, grocery, retail, all those places, and still make money. Yeah. You just have to look at our structures differently.
Now, I'm a big fan of Marine Stewardship Council, as you are. You're an ambassador of MSC yourself. Yeah. Tell us more about your vision for sustainability in the industry. The industry has an interesting history, an interesting reputation. So, what are your thoughts about sustainability overhaul moving forward for the industry, and how do you see your role as an ambassador?
Well, I can tell you my role is defined by the opportunity that I have to speak to consumers directly. I'm not an NGO or a policy or a federal operator talking to you through a TV screen or a memo. I'm out there grocery shopping next to you, and I'm talking to you directly about how we can incorporate more sustainable practices into our daily diet. So what I'm seeing is basically breaking down the challenges that people face when they go to the store, retail, wherever they're shopping, and they're going, I don't even know what to choose here. Beyond it being a price point scenario, like what's the cheapest, I still want to find a way to eat healthy and well, which, I think it's like 80% of consumers express interest in finding more sustainable options for home, as long as they can afford them and make it available. My job is to help those people discover, let me do the heavy lifting for you and provide great solutions so you don't have to be too stressed or worried about it, but you still get to make a positive impact, whether it comes down to regenerative seafood practices, whether aquaculture and wild, interesting packaging alternatives. My friend has a Fieldless Farms. They're based out of Ottawa. They grow lettuce aquaponically And they're the first company to put their packaging is cardboard that's compostable versus plastic with a plastic lid. Like their innovation is that some of their innovation is that packaging, and that eliminates waste. And, throw it in your garden, and makes a nice little pathway for you to walk to your tomato plants on. So this feature of sustainability is me having me and others acting as sort of like the bridge between all of the noise and clutter out there, and some really great simple choices that people can make to feel confident in their purchases around, feeding themselves well and right, and that's good for the people and planet. I see that certification standards rule often, like they are held at a high standard. Like, certified organic has been around for a very long time. MSC's been around for over 20 years. Like, these things are there. Everyone's got their issues. Like, no one's perfect. But these are third-party audited businesses or organizations that are doing their best to find the best options for consumers, in my opinion.
So with all of your experience and your successes, what would be your advice to aspiring entrepreneurs in the field?
Well, it's funny because with Langley Foods, I'm talking to a lot of new entrepreneurs, and it's really, really exciting. And I'm loving to feel the passion of other founders. Again, like everyone's really excited and excited about their great idea. And if I knew I was going to say this 10 years ago and now I'm saying it, I'd be like, Charlotte, you're such an idiot. Like, screw you for saying this. It's patience. It's friggin' patience. It's being like, I want this to happen now. And it takes these things that have to happen quickly for it to be successful often. But you really have to be patient in your planning and realize that it's probably going to take longer than you want it to, but B, it needs to take that time. A slow business, growing slow equity, growing a slow business is more sustainable than a quick, fast, overwhelming. It's easier to make mistakes when you're rushing through the program, especially when you're new. Be patient with yourself and really do your diligence on your people that you want to collaborate with. Make sure you're protecting yourself that way.
Well, Charlotte, I couldn't imagine a better person to talk about this. You've lived and breathed it. You took it from the kitchen table to shelves across the country. Like I said, I'm a huge fan of the product you created of your creativity and your diligence and your get to and get it done. If folks want to get in touch with you and learn more, how do they get in touch with you?
I love direct inbox. I got a nice little info@langley.inc is a really great way to get in touch with me directly if you want to talk about investing or being invested in sharing your business ideas. Or you want to follow along my fun culinary journeys on the old social media, which I love as well. You can check me out at Chef Charlotte Langley on Instagram and TikTok. Very
good, Chef Charlotte. I'm gonna connect that like as soon as we're done. Well, listen, Charlotte, it's a long time coming, but boy, was it ever worth it. It's been great. Just to hear your voice and get your insights. I wish you, Sylvan and I wish you continued success in every path of every journey you take. And thank you again for joining us on the Food Professor podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. And I look forward to chatting at another time as well.
Take care, Charlotte.
You too. Talk to you soon.
More bad behavior in the food service world. This time, both articles, I think more coincidentally than on purpose, coming out of India, news out of India. New York Times ripped apart the sugar business. Yep. Big suppliers to Pepsi and Coke, who were named in the article. Pepsi, said, "Well, yeah, we got to do better." And Coke said, they're not going to say anything because whatever. Women getting hysterectomies to continue to work in the fields, horrible working conditions, and basically brands that just look the other way. Well, they told us. They told us to be good. And at the same time today in the Globe and Mail, again from India, terrible behavior in the shrimp industry, Calciprese, the shrimp industry. And, even your friends Lidl named in that report, who basically announced they're coming for an inspection like 2 months in advance. So everybody gets hidden or all the sins get put away.
Of course, yeah.
So, we continue to see these brands rely on third or fourth party Do you think any of these brands care or are going to wake up? I guess maybe they'll care when consumers care, but it seems to be hard to connect these dots for everyone. Like when you talk about this bad behavior, does it wash over people?
Like
what do you think?
Years ago, like if you would ask me 20 years ago, if in 2024 we would have transparent, ethical global food supply chains, I would say probably, because that's what people want. But of course, people will be upset based on things they know. And global supply chains are still quite obscure. And you need reporting. You need some reports like the Globe and Mail to kind of raise awareness. But let's be honest, Michael. I mean, these articles are well written. These reports are well done. They come and they go.
Yeah.
So does behavior change? Really? Do people actually go and ask questions to these companies? You may actually have a few. They may actually ask questions, but at the end of the day, people move on and they go and buy their products, their favorite products, and that's basically it. Yeah. So it's unfortunate, but that's why it's so hard to move the needle on international issues like this. But Canada, make no mistake, I mean, Canada is often in the middle of some of these scandals, and because we often think, like, we learned this week that Canada Royal Milk out of Kingston just got its CFIA approval to produce infant formula after 2 years of waiting. Thank goodness. But are Canadians going to buy infant formula made from or coming from a China-owned plant in Kingston, Ontario? I imagine some people will have a problem with that. We often think of ourselves as being whiter than white when it comes to food safety, ethics across the supply chain, but we're not always, unfortunately.
Well, and I guess we can point at the regulators, because this article talks about, in the Globe and Mail, talks about how the CFIA doesn't inspect a percentage of the shrimp.
Yeah.
It's not just bad behavior. It's also some of the shrimp are coming in unsound for being consumption, but they're not being inspected. They're too random inspections. No. So is there something that, I mean, if the CFIA folks are
staff,
listening,
by the way, do you have any idea how many people work at the CFIA? I'm just curious to know if you know.
I think that, like, they're one of the biggest agencies in the government, right? They're thousands of people.
8,700, I believe.
8,700.
And the number has gone up, I believe, almost 20% since Trudeau has been in government. So it's not like there's been some cut. Under Harper, there were major cuts, not under Trudeau. So it's not a capacity issue, really.
All right. Well, CFIA said they monitor imports, but they don't seem to be monitoring enough by this report.
Well, they do work in defense for the CFIA. They do work with the FDA, the USDA, because they have more capacity, more resources, and they do check, verify in situ overseas, because the CFIA doesn't have the same resources. But at the end of the day, you do want to show up once in a while. I mean, to be serious or to be taken seriously.
Well, the article says they take a risk-based approach, and they randomly inspected 267 shrimp. That's a complaint-based, right? What is risk-based?
No, risk-based. So risk-based assessment approach is, if we think you're high risk, we're going to inspect you more often.
Okay.
So if you've had recalls, we know that you're wrong. You're ethical. We're going to be there more often. That's risk-based. That's a risk-based approach.
Okay. The European Union checks 50%.
You focus on the bad apples.
They're looking for antibiotics apparently in the shrimp. Maybe after this article they'll pay more attention.
No, let's end this podcast reporting on the report from the Globe and Mail. That's
reporting on the report. That's right.
Exactly.
Let's end on a positive note. It's an anniversary of sorts. It is 60 years since the invention of poutine. Of course, you have a book on the invention of poutine.
Yes,
and you like poutine because it was one of these trends that started.
I don't like poutine. I like the history of poutine.
You like the history of poutine. You liked my poutine when I made it for you, but.
Well, that was darn good. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But basically,
it took me 3 days to digest, but hey.
Yeah, that was a bit heavy. You like the idea of a food that came from rural somewhere and went national. I mean, that's the story of poutine, right? Talk about the story of poutine a little bit for the listeners.
It's a simple, very unpretentious dish that is now known around the world. I mean, the reason why I wrote Poutine Nation was to basically understand how how the hell it happened, basically. Because, I mean, many people have dishes and they don't get glorified as much as poutine. So I got to the bottom of it. And of course, I had to review its history. And its history is rich with anecdotes and people behind the success of poutine. And so, yes, poutine is 60 years old this year because of Jean-Paul Leroy, who was really the first to sell poutine in Drummondville with the 3 ingredients: gravy, chips, fries, and cheese curds. Because he was a professional sommelier. He got his training out of Montreal. But the origins of poutine is really in Warwick in 1957 with Fernand Lachance and his wife Germaine Lachance, and they were the first to really put poutine on the menu in 1957. But Lachance hated gravy. He hated it. He didn't like the idea of putting gravy on fries. So he sold cheese curds with fries, and his wife made a sauce, and that was sold on the side. So but they did call it a poutine. But in 1964, 60 years ago, that's when poutine was sold. And of course, I don't think it didn't stop there. Ashton LeBlanc, who founded Ashton Restaurants in Quebec, 24 restaurants. He was the first to operate a chain of restaurants glorifying, showcasing poutine, forcing major chains like Harvey's, Burger King to adopt poutine on its menu in the Quebec region. And the rest, as we say, is history.
The rest is history. I remember the first time I had poutine, I was working born and raised in Ottawa, and I was working with some guys on a job site, and they said, let's go over to, we were in Hull or Elmer, or we crossed the bridge, as we used to say, and everybody's eating poutine, and I'm like, what is that? And I tried it.
What is that?
It's delicious.
It's very delicious, especially yours.
All right, well, that's a wrap on a very busy show. We kind of rifled through a lot of stuff. It's still going to be a long episode, but lots of stuff going on in the world. My goodness, just for a short week. Short week, long episode.
I Michael, time to listen to the entire thing.
That's right. You got a long weekend.
Don't skip any sections now.
That's right. And I'm who am I? I'm Michael LeBlanc, podcaster, keynote speaker, customer, consumer growth consultant, and you are?
I'm your sidekick, the food professor, Sylvain Charlebois.
All right, Sylvain, happy Easter, and enjoy your long weekend. Like I said, long episode, short week, but we'll be back next week. We got another great interview. Listen, all right, everybody, have safe travels, and Sylvain, I'll see you again soon.
Take care.